Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I'm naturopathic Dr. Fiona Chin, co-founder of Kidney Coach and the Kidney Disease Solution, and our naturopathic supplements that go with the program, Genesis. And I'm joined again today by the amazing Jessianna Saville. She is the leader, the CEO of Kidney Nutritional Institute. They are an amazing team of renal dietitians, mind coaches, and everything in between to help people really navigate their journey through chronic kidney disease. And they're based there in the US. And we send so many patients to them and that work and collaborate with them, and they just get such great results. And Jessianna is just a wealth of information. She talks at many big congresses and integrative medicine conferences around the US. And so we are always privileged to have you on, Jessianna. Thank you for joining me again today.
Great to be here. So happy always to share about what we can do with kidney disease. There's a lot you can do.
Exactly. We just did a big webinar last week, and right before it, like just the amount of people with chronic kidney disease, and, you know, even people younger, you know, we always think chronic kidney disease is 70 plus, but, you know, we had this webinar with 1,000 people on, and really I was surprised because we polled our audience as we went through of just how young people were, whether it's a genetic disorder or people with diabetes, they're getting it younger and earlier. And it really is one of the biggest epidemics, especially in the USA. So it's a really important topic. And one of the things that we haven't talked enough about, but we started that with our last podcast together in this topic, is transplant. If people get to that level and they really do need a transplant, all things transplant. And last time we talked about preparing for it. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about, and it's so important, and I'll let you talk further to this, is you need to be, before they'll let you have a transplant, they're really very big on making sure that you're a healthy weight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably one of the biggest barriers for people is weight. And it's not just a barrier because they can't get a transplant, it's because a lot of people just struggle with losing weight. Yeah.
Let's dive into that now. Before we start, I wanted to ask, is there parameters around, like, if a transplant team's looking to put people up the list and move it, you've got to be under a certain weight? Is there something that they're really specific about when it comes to kidney transplants?
Okay, so there's two things actually to know about this. So whether you're on dialysis or you're kind of late stage kidney disease, you know that transplant is probably your next step to care for your kidney health. Is number one, it really depends on the transplant center. Some of them have quite broad guidelines, higher BMIs that people can get transplanted by, and some of them are a little bit tighter. So it really just depends. And honestly, that's a great conversation that you're going to manage with your transplant team and with your physician as well. So those are just a couple things to think about. But the other thing, and I actually didn't know this, one of my patients told me this because he was a little bit heavier, closer towards transplant, and he was sharing with me that people that are heavier, that they can't use, let me see if I get this right, they can't use as long of a ureter, I guess, connecting the kidneys, and so that can sometimes change the outcomes a little bit. So as doctors, like, I highly recommend, like, get your weight down because it can improve your outcomes. So you know, I think that there are definitely a lot of reasons. And, you know, losing weight doesn't mean that you're like Instagram skinny or that you're like the buff girl going to the gym. Losing weight means that and you can be like a higher BMI and still at like a good, healthy place, right? Sometimes we say, oh, high BMI means you're fat and like not healthy. That's not true, right? You can have like some excess body fat and still be really healthy. It is just getting to a better place is really, like, maybe you're holding on to some extra weight that you really don't need to be holding on to, and you can make a few modifications and it'll come off. There really are a lot of benefits to that.
And I would imagine too, like you mentioned, there's probably better outcomes being at a healthy BMI with just post-transplant and how you recover and all of those sort of things that we know, versus if you're overweight or have a high BMI you're going to produce more cytokines, inflammation, all of those sort of things that your poor old body's going to have to cope with post-surgery. So I guess bringing it down that way is going to help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so on this topic, what I kind of want to dig into is busting some big weight loss myths, because I think this is one of the most frustrating things for patients. And I want to give a personal story from when I worked in dialysis. I worked in this dialysis unit, and I had this young patient. She was young, she was probably like early 40s. And she had a full-time job. She had, a husband. I think she had a son, and she really wanted to get a transplant so badly, and she's heavier, and the parameter of her being able to get listed was her weight. And I remember, as a new dietitian, and this is what we're taught in dietitian school, and now I've been a dietitian for almost 20 years, a little bit smarter, but at that time what we practiced was calories in, calories out. And you hear it all the time. You see it on Instagram, you see it like all over the place. Like, that is what you're supposed to do, right? Calories in, calories out. So if people are eating a lot more calories than they're burning, then they're going to put on weight. And while that is part of the story, it's not the whole story. And if they eat less calories, then they should lose weight. So I had this lady track her food religiously, and it was spot on. I'm pretty sure she recorded everything. Even though she would not lose a single pound, she could not lose weight. She was eating like 800 calories a day. And I was like, well, maybe she's just under recording. Maybe she's snacking. Like everything I could pull out of my hat to figure out where the extra calories might be coming from that she didn't realize she was eating. Tried everything, and she could not lose weight. And honestly, it was a few years later where I became a lot wiser as a clinician and understood where there were some major barriers. And that's really what I want people to look at and see, is that it's not just calories in, calories out. If your doctor or even your dietitian's been like, well, you just record your food, we're just going to have you eat less. That is definitely not the whole story. It is not honestly that simple. We wish it was that simple. It is not that simple. So, because I'm visual, let me just share. So this is actually a guide we made for dietitians at Kidney Nutrition Institute, because we were so frustrated by continually seeing this like calories in, calories out. And this is for, maybe you're on dialysis, maybe you're not on dialysis, but you're still moving towards transplant. Weight loss is really quite a big topic. And when you look at this, I don't want you to think, oh, I have to do all these things to lose weight. Just consider if there's one of these that might be a big player for you, or maybe one of these that maybe you haven't considered. And that's where I really want you to think. Not like, do I have to figure out all these things? No, you don't have to figure everything out, but maybe you've done calories in, calories out, you've exercised, you've cut out sugar, you've reduced fat, whatever you've seen or been told to do, and you're not seeing the scale budge. Consider that there might be some other things to think about. Okay. So, and Fiona, I definitely would love for you to chime in and tell me your experience with patients well as we go through this. Okay, so let's just start. We're going to start here at the top and go around clockwise. And some of these are all tied together. Okay, so we are going to start with intake. Not because it's not a factor, it's just not the only factor. So for some people, you do gain weight or can't lose weight because you are just eating too much, right? That can be because you're on a medication that gives you like more of an appetite. It can be because maybe you're in a very stressful period, and on top of, we'll go to stress in a second, stress driving certain hormone pathways that cause for weight retention. You might just be stress eating. Like you're like, your go-to is like Coke or like chocolate or ice cream or whatever, right? You might just be a stress eater. Some people we've seen where in the past, they haven't had a lot of good food security, so they don't always know where the next meal is going to come from. They've had many nights where they're being hungry, and then suddenly they now have consistent access to food, and they can increase their intake because they're used to not having food, and so you eat. Okay, so this can be an issue for some people. If you feel like for some reason maybe you're eating a lot more now, there's still the root cause of like why, like what is driving that increase. Okay, so this one. Number 2, hormones. I'm going to just kind of bump these two together, but women that go through menopause, and as the hormones shift and you start having decreased estrogen, that can cause for some women some weight gain for sure. And a lot of people find success. And again, this can be controversial, but a lot of people find success with just digging into actually getting some hormone replacement therapy.
100%. Our fat, when we go through menopause, fat takes over the production of estrogen. So the body hangs on to fat to make sure you've got enough estrogen. It's a self-protective mechanism. So women that are a little bit heavier actually have a better time going through menopause than leaner women. So it's a natural protection of the body. But yes, if you're thinking about transplant, then a little bit of hormone replacement might actually be a really good idea just to move the needle on that one.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Same thing is for some people, this can be men or women that get hormone imbalances, or they start to have a lot more estrogen in their system than otherwise. This can cause some weight gain as well. In the holistic, the functional world, this is a big one that a lot of practitioners will look at because it's actually pretty common even in young people, whether, I mean, it can happen for a lot of different reasons if you get this imbalance in your hormones, but this can definitely be a driving problem as well for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, you're probably not going to get this one resolved in a conventional setting. If you go to your general practitioner, say, hey, you know, I think I'm estrogen dominant. I think my hormones are like all over the place. That's why I lost weight. They don't usually do a lot of testing or looking into that, has been my experience. So usually you're going to have to work with a functional doctor who kind of specializes in this area to really dig into that as a root cause, if that potentially something that's going on.
I'm here in Australia. And if you're a male, the great way to know is, unfortunately, you get the man boobs. You know, you get a lot of weight around that way. Females, you can have menstrual cycle issues, heavy bleeding, lots of PMS, all of those sorts of things. That can be a sign that there might be some estrogen dominance there. The best way to test is actually through saliva hormone tests. As Jessianna said, GPs aren't going to do that. That won't get picked up. And you need to be looking at, there's 3 types of estrogen, E1, E2, E3. We need to look at all 3 of those, and the saliva is the most effective way to do that. So yes, a functional practitioner of some description is going to be the one to give you answers there.
Yeah, and some women will say things like, I just felt like I couldn't think clearly. I felt like I was, you know, like a little bit crazy in the head. And yeah, and like my cycle was off and like my emotions were up and down. Like that can be a definite sign of hormone imbalance. It's not the only thing that causes those things, but if that's where you're at and you're like, yeah, and I just can't lose weight, it's something to look into. And again, as we're going through this, if you're struggling with your weight and trying to get to transplant, you don't have to do all of these, but maybe there's one that is the golden ticket for you. Okay, another one for a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but can be a contributing factor is if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. If it's been diagnosed or not being diagnosed, this one can be an issue because there is some insulin resistance, so it makes it really hard for a lot of people to lose weight as well. So and we've had patients who they've had this and it was never diagnosed. And they're like, I don't know, I've just always kind of been a little bit heavy and never really been looked into. So this is definitely one to look into because there are medications or even nutritional treatments, supplements that can really help reduce that insulin resistance that you get with PCOS, and that can help start to decrease your weight as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, diabetes. Yeah, again, because of this insulin resistance that you get with diabetes, this can be an issue as well. And you know, I honestly feel like one of the first line treatments you're going to do with diabetes is, if you're on meds, make sure your meds are balanced and giving you the outcome you want. But even better is working from a dietary standpoint. For some people with diabetes, ketosis, honestly, a ketogenic or low carb diet can be a fantastic way to really get these blood sugar levels balanced. And you can do that safely with kidney disease with a professional, for sure.
100% agree with that one.
And you guys have a glucose formula as well, right, Fiona? And that kind of helps some of this stabilization of blood sugar.
Yeah, exactly. Glucose Restore, yeah.
Okay. Another one, and this one I can speak to personally. So, if you have, if you're really in a time of life where maybe you're not getting good deep sleep, maybe you're just like you're tired all the time, this can be both a sign. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. A sign. Come on, sneeze. A sign of some underlying issues, but it can also be a driver, because if you get poor sleep and then you don't, like, your body can't regenerate, and then you get up the next day, you start driving these weird cortisol levels, and cortisol levels are really part of this fight and flight response and can cause you to really hold on to fat as well. Plus, there is so much research. There is study after study after study after study showing that sleep is connected to weight. And so if you don't, if you are consistently cutting your sleep short, you really can end up having some problems with weight. And sometimes it's because it drives hormone imbalance, and sometimes it's because it drives stress. So, I mean, it just links back to everything. So sleep is such a critical part of weight loss. Cannot state that enough.
Yeah. Yeah, sleep is where you do all your detoxing and weight loss sort of stuff. So if you're not getting that nice deep sleep, you're not getting any of those processes. So
yeah,
definitely, well, I'm glad you mentioned it. It's so underrated how much that plays a role in weight.
Yeah, and sometimes this can be a really kind of vicious cycle, because people can have some sleep apnea because they're overweight, and you can have sleep apnea even when you're not overweight. But they can have some sleep apnea because you're overweight, and maybe it hasn't been diagnosed, you're not on a good treatment for it, and then you have really poor sleep quality because you have the sleep apnea where you're like not breathing sometimes at night, and so your body keeps waking up to breathe. And then that just drives even more the weight gain because you're not getting that good, deep, restful sleep. So if you suspect, and sometimes, you know, a partner can say, wow, like you snore a lot at night. I notice you like are waking up choking. I notice like you're very restless at night. If you notice, a partner can usually tell you, or there's so many great devices now that are like our little robots measuring our sleep. But if you know you have poor sleep quality, it can be worthwhile, if you're struggling with your weight, to go do a good sleep study and see if you can get a diagnosis behind it and a little bit more information, because it can be managed, right? You can medically manage if it's a sleep apnea issue as well. For sure. This one is in everything, but there is a lot of science with how our gut microbiome can drive weight as well. So if you have a lot of significant digestive issues, looking at helping your gut out, whether with more diverse diet, reducing processed foods, increasing your fiber, can really help with the weight loss as well. Another big one. Nutrient deficiencies would be a big one as well. Again, this one's really hard to pick up in a conventional setting from your general practitioner. Usually you'd have to work with a functional dietitian or functional doctor to really dig into if there's a nutrient deficiency that's driving a weight loss resistance as well. Yeah. And just kind of to follow up on this, usually the reason this is a problem is because the nutrient deficiency is driving a thyroid issue, or it's driving a hormone detoxification issue. So it's not always like, oh, you don't have B12, and if you don't have B12, you can't create energy, then you can't lose weight. It's more that these nutrients really help support hormones and enzymes that are going to help support all these other pieces. And that's why they're so critical to get right. So I don't know if these is so much a causation as much as like a supporting factor that you just have to get right. Okay, medications. I think everyone knows that this can be an issue. If you noticed a weight gain directly associated with when you started a medication, Steroids, antidepressants are quite common. You'll see weight gain with them. Mismanaged insulin. For some women, birth control, like they'll notice they start with birth control, they'll say, oh, birth control doesn't cause weight gain. They'll say, but I took XYZ pill and that's when I started gaining weight. Sometimes it's because it causes hormone imbalance or gut microbiota. But if you notice that association, you can definitely, of course, talk with your doctor about it. Oh, there are alternatives. Do we have like a treatment time frame for this medication? That seems to be causing the weight gain as well. With steroids, they're usually not meant to be long-term forever and ever medications. And so you realize that, yes, you're going to gain some weight on the steroid. And a lot of people will lose the weight when they come off of it too. So you just have to kind of bide that time and be patient with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other thoughts on the medications? Did I miss any medications?
No, that you've named the big ones: steroids, antidepressants, and oral contraceptives, and actually some of the antipsychotics as well. I see definitely put weight on people as well. If you're using that for seizure control, that may not be actually just for mental health. We can use that with epilepsy and a few other things. I do see those for some people cause a major issue too.
Yeah, and can just increase your appetite so much, and that's when our body has these really strong cues for us to follow. It's really hard, like even with our best self-control, to always turn those off. It just really is. You can sometimes be fighting a losing battle. Okay. Another big one, increase intake of processed foods or sugar. It just causes this inflammatory process. Sugar is a huge one. If you love sugar and you've never tried just cutting it out for a couple of weeks, the results can be pretty amazing. So that's one definitely that you could look at as well.
Yeah.
Another thing. So sometimes we go through we have an event in our life and we have a decrease in muscle mass. Now, muscle, as we all know, burns a lot of energy, and sometimes people will start gaining weight after they've been through a period where they've been a little bit more sedentary or just not been able to be as active, whether it's, post-surgery or pregnancy, or maybe they're just like so busy they just weren't able to be as active as they wanted to, or maybe they're having like some pain or arthritis. But when you start having that decrease in muscle mass, some people can gain weight as well. And of course, then you have to it's just a waiting game, right? Post-surgery, you're doing rehab, and you just kind of have to wait for when you're ready to get going again. But if you're having other things, knee or hip pain, musculoskeletal pain, getting into physical therapy, seeing if you can get some insight on what you can do, right? Maybe you're not going to be able to go swim laps because of whatever injury, but maybe you can do some hand weights, right? But getting some good ideas on what you can do to maintain or grow what muscles you can is really so huge. I mean, the benefits are just astronomical to be able to maintain that muscle mass and some sort of physical activity. Two more that I think are really big. Stress. This, I think, is so huge. It's so underrated when it comes to weight gain, because in most westernized societies, we are go. We are scroll. We are like turned on all the time, creating kind of this underlying stress. And stress 100% drives so many pathways in our body that can cause us to gain weight, mindlessly eat, excessively eat, stress eat. But just the hormones that are involved with stress in and of itself can cause weight gain or weight retention. So it makes it hard to lose weight because your body feels like it's in this state where there is a threat, and our body does not want to get rid of weight when there is a stress or a threat, because it may need it, right? And so it just kind of really holds on to it. So being able to find your stress management techniques, really reduce that, can be very, very powerful.
Yeah. Stress is, again, another big underrated driver of weight gain for sure.
I think it's huge. Like if I could pick like two on here that are huge, stress and sleep are like so much bigger than calories in, calories out. I actually think they should addressed first before we ever talk about calories. Stress, sleep, stress, sleep, stress, sleep. I just think they're foundational for health. And then the last thing is looking at thyroid, and getting a full thyroid panel. You know, a long time ago, there used to be kind of this medical, it wasn't a joke, but it was like this opinion that everyone gained their weight, or everyone blamed their weight gain on the thyroid. And the doctor, it's not your thyroid, you're just eating too much. But honestly, way too often the thyroid is underdiagnosed. People are hypothyroid, or they have some sort of autoimmune process going on, and you just are not able to, you know, to lose weight. You really, really need those thyroid hormones to lose weight. So if you have other symptoms like cold intolerance, or you're feeling kind of this underlying anxiety, or you just can't think straight, you might consider having your general practitioner to run a full thyroid panel, TSH, T3, T4, etc., so that you can see if this might actually be an issue for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting how you've got all of those, because they all feed into each other too, you know, like as you mentioned, poor sleep, polycystic, PCOS and diabetes can go together as PCOS and hormonal imbalances, and sugary foods will drive diabetes and PCOS. Your gut microbiota being out can drive all of them. If your sleep's out, it's going to drive all of them, stress, all of them. So they're all interfed. So I think unless something really jumped out at people, I think you're right. Starting with the poor sleep quality and stress will mop up a lot of them. And then if you can get your microbiota right and some nutrient deficiencies, it's going to shift a lot of this other stuff going on as well. So, you know, if you're stuck, they're the places to start with. But, you know, addressing these, you know, it's such a holistic way to look at your health anyway. So I'm like, it's pretty much a blueprint there for good health in one big circle if you're addressing weight holistically. So it's all there.
And you know what's really interesting is sometimes when you think about weight loss, you think, but I won't be able to have such an American thing. But my dad and I, we love like a good root beer float. It's very American, right? Most people think root beer is disgusting overseas. And you think like, but I'll never have that root beer float again. Whenever my dad and I get together, we have root beer float. But the thing is that when you shift these things, what ends up happening is you don't want some of those things. You're like, yeah, like dad, like let's have one, but you like only eat half of it because you're not really into it, but you enjoy like, you know, the social moment. And you'll see that a lot of times people are scared of addressing the weight because they're like, yeah, but I like to bake cookies with my kid, or I like to go out and have dinner with my friends, and we always go to XYZ place, and that's not going to fit in like a weight loss plan. And there's kind of this sadness of like, I have to give up this like this very important social emotional part of my life to lose weight. And the thing is that if you really set some foundation, sleep and stress, and like 90% of the time eat pretty well, a lot, and I mean, you have to address these other things, but I'm just saying, if you can address some of the core things, some of that desire for some of these activities that maybe aren't ideal for losing weight, they really reduce, like just naturally.
Yeah, 100%. And like you say, if you go off sugar and you just try to do that for 3 or 4 weeks, if you've never done that before, like I did that 20 years ago when I was finishing my naturopathic degree, and I can't do sugar anymore. It's just too sweet. Mum made gluten-free, dairy-free, blueberry thing. And I'm like, oh, you put in too much sugar. And she said, it's just apple juice. I'm like, too sweet. So your taste buds do change, and they do it very quickly.
Yeah, they really do. Okay, so a couple things here to know as well. And I'm going to skip through these, step 1, 2, 3, 4. But basically they say, hey, like you may need to go to additional practitioner. This is a sheet we actually use for dietitians. And you know, it's good to like really dig into what are your thoughts about weight. Sometimes weight is such an emotional thing, from like your mom commenting on it, or your grandma, or it's, you know, weight is about success, not just about weight. And people tie a lot of things to weight in our global westernized culture. And sometimes you need to let those go and build just a better relationship with food. Let's talk about food, right? What can you do on a food basis? Because it's not what you might think. For us, if we're going to dig into food, first we say, okay, can we get rid of any processed foods and reduce sugar? Like those two things are like the two first things actually you'd want to do on a weight loss. But then beyond that, we say, okay, more fats, more fiber. More fats, more fiber. They stabilize your blood sugar levels, and they really nourish your microbiome, especially the diversity of fiber. And these can be really huge in starting to shift the needle, as if you get more, and I should say more healthy fats, not just more fats, right? More healthy fats in your diet and more fiber, you can really start to see some great things happen there. Exercise, this one is agreeable in every industry. This makes a difference. Our bodies are meant to move. So however, works for you, you got to play around till you find something you're like, I love doing that. And then again, stress. So those are like just these core pieces. If you feel like you don't know what to do with the stress, getting with a therapist, or if you're in dialysis, you can work with the social worker that they have on staff. That can be really huge at helping you identify thought patterns that are driving stress, or situations that drive stress, and how you can handle them differently. And you just get to know yourself on managing that stress, and makes a huge difference. But you're never going to escape stress, right? Stress is part of being a human, but you can learn to approach it really differently.
And what is interesting about everything that you went through in that diagram and below is looking at all of those things pre-transplant. It may not get you off the transplant list, but guarantee it's going to help your kidney function.
Yeah.
What everything you're looking at there is, and you're going to, and again, your EGFR might not go shooting up, but you should feel better. You should have more energy, meaning when you go into your transplant, you've got a better foundation, which means your recovery will be better. You're going to have a better outcomes potentially. You're going to nurture this new kidney. You're in a state to really bring this lovely new kidney into your body and the best sort of thing. So everything that you've got there not only obviously helps with weight loss, but I would think helps with pre and post-transplant recovery, and then just getting that kidney to function as best as possible. And it's great because it's so holistic and not just aimed at treating kidneys, but it's all just going to work together, which I think is really how it should be, right? Very holistic approach.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get more sleep, you feel good. When you reduce stress, you feel better. I mean, like, the cool thing about health, sometimes health you think of as this challenge or struggle. But the truth is, as you learn more about your health, there is a level of happiness that comes with that too, because it helps stabilize a lot of other things in our lives.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. And they're all interestingly intertwined. If we can get those, diet right, stress levels right, exercise and sleep, and then, looking at our social and connections and things like that, you've got the basis there, and then you can build on that. And that's just, as we say, just really good, solid foundational stuff. And then everything, you can get more technical and put on top of that. But there's no point really doing a whole pile of work, say, on hormones if you're not sleeping properly. They all need to sort of work together. So I think that's a great holistic approach that anyone working in that frame model, I would fall over if they didn't feel 100 times better before going into their transplant and didn't have better outcomes if they were working with that, which is, the whole point, right? So
yeah, I agree. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jessianna. Anything else you want to add about healthy ways to lose weight before coming into a transplant?
I guess probably just on key takeaways for here, because I was doing these key takeaways at the end. So key takeaways are, if you have struggled with weight and you've gone at it from a calories in, calories out, hopefully this gives you hope that there are other things to look at. So that's number one. Number two is, if you feel like this is a lot to put together, highly recommend working with a functional dietitian or a naturopathic team that takes this very good holistic approach, or a functional doctor, because then you can look at all those pieces and you pick kind of the low-hanging fruit to start with. So that's number two. And then number three, again, I would say that if you can get a professional on your side, maybe even you're like, yeah, I think it totally has to be a hormone issue. If you can get a professional on your side, so often it decreases this kind of learning curve that you have and about your health, because they can identify and pinpoint things that you might have blinders on. And so I just really, really recommend getting a, you know, a dietitian or a good naturopathic physician, somebody on your side as you go through this initial phase of like, I really want to lose weight. And they can help set it up in a step-by-step plan and take your blinders off so that you're not maybe so focused on, oh, it's because of the sugar. I ate sugar and now I'm not going to lose weight. They say, wait a second. Like, let's think about this, like give you some really good practical interventions so that you really target the right thing. Because it might not have been that, like, that cookie you ate. It might be because for the last 2 weeks you haven't been sleeping, and they just take that blinder off so you're not guilting on yourself about the cookie, and you can, you know, say, oh, like I really just need to focus on like one thing at a time. No.
Yeah, I think that's a really good key point. And to Jessianna's point, if it's something that you think, well, I really want a successful transplant, and whether you need to lose weight or not, some of these things might actually be really good for me to address, then reach out to the team at kidneynutritionalinstitute.org. I'll put their email address below. They've got some great programs. We can do one-on-one. They've got so many great ways that you can work with them. So never fear to reach out to the team. And they, because of the modern wonders of Zoom and telehealth, you can work with them wherever you are in the world or around the US, especially if you've got insurance and things like that. So Jessianna's got a huge team of professionals that are all very well trained to work with that. So again, I'll put the details below. If you want to know more about what we do, head to www.kidneycoach.com or on Facebook, Instagram, and all of those places under Kidney Coach. Remember to hit subscribe and like. That way you will get notified anytime we put up new content. And Jessianna, again, thank you for walking us through that, being the genius that you are, and for being such a bright light in all things kidney in the world. We all very much appreciate you.
Hey, all right. Thank you so much.
No worries. Bye.